Welcome to Grit, the Real Estate Growth Mindset podcast, hosted by Brian Charlesworth, founder of Sisu. Sisu provides growth automation software for real estate. You'll hear stories from real estate thought and technology leaders, team owners, and brokers on how they grew their business in a rapidly changing industry. You'll learn how to transform your brokerage and teams into a high-performing and analytics-driven business so you have a new, durable, competitive advantage against disruption in your market. So let's get right into it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Grit Podcast. I'm Brian Charlesworth. I'm the founder of Sisu and the host of the show, and super excited. Guys, our guests just keep, elevating. It's fun to see. There are so many leaders in this industry right now that are just crushing it. And we have two of those with us today. So I'm excited to announce that I have Ken with us and Brandon. These guys run an amazing team out of Michigan, and it's called Best Life & Co. And anyway, what I want to emphasize here is I'm seeing this more and more and more, and it's really fun to see this with our Sisu customers, which these guys are Sisu customers as well. But the market, you guys, has been down, right? In 22, we did 6.8 million homes. In 23, we did 3.8 million. This year is expected to be under 4 million. And yet we have teams like these guys who are growing their business in a market where the market is shrinking. And it shrunk so much a few years ago from 22 to 23 that a lot of people got out of the business. And if I look at the market share that you guys have captured in that time frame, actually growing your business 25 to 50% per year, as the market starts to grow again, your business is going to take off because you own so much market share in Michigan now. So congratulations, Ken, Brandon. Grateful to have you guys on the show.
Yeah,
Ken, I'm going to hand it to you and let you share a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, for sure. So interestingly enough, Brandon and I, we come from a grocery background. And that's how we met, which is funny because now we're both in real estate running the show, but started in the grocery retail business, did that for 5 years post-college. And then
what does that mean? Hold on. We can't just skip over this. Did that mean you bagged groceries or what did you guys do?
I was the number one bagger in Metro Detroit. No, I'm kidding. So Aldi grocery store. Are there Aldis out in Utah?
Aldis?
Yeah.
I know Aldi's from Germany. There are a lot of those.
Oh, there you go. Yep. That's the one. That's the one. So they have a pretty cool district manager training program right out of college. So they kind of throw you into the fire. You work long hours, retail hours, high accountability. You go through the training, you become a cashier and then a shift manager and then run a store for 4 or 5 months and then get right into district manager training, where essentially they give you a ton of autonomy and you were running the full operations, financials, human resources of 4 to 6 Aldi grocery stores. And you're doing that at 22, 23 years old. So,
wow.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. So this is really cool.
Yeah.
And that's cool that you guys were both running these stores like that. That's how you met each other.
Yep.
So you said this one thing, Ken, you said it was high accountability. What did that look like? What did the accountability look like? Because I think that probably has a lot to do with why you guys run your business the way you do today.
Yeah, we always joke and we say, if you work 60 hours a week at Aldi, you have to have like 59 or 60 good ones to not get fired. And obviously, we've kind of taken that self-discipline and accountability over to real estate, which kind of helps us quite a bit. But high accountability, you had to set your schedule. Wherever you said you were going to be, you had to be there. You were 23 years old and you were leading store managers, shift managers that were 2-3 times your age. So you had all of a sudden you kind of jump into the leadership role and you might not be quite ready for it yet, but all of a sudden in 6 stores, you might have, 50 to 75 employees that are looking up to you for direction, leadership, guidance, and the whole nine. So, at 23 years old, most people are still in their 5th year of college or figuring life out. And all of a sudden you have 50 to 75 people, looking up to you with a very tough industry to thrive in. That's what it means to me. BV, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar, right? But I also, would add the element of, you look at accountability and, I mean, every facet of the business you had transparency into, right? And so like you could see everything and how you then manage yourself and your conversations and the teams. Like, it was very unique at such a young age, right? 22, 23, like Ken was saying, being able to be responsible for so much and have so much information at your fingertips to be able to act on, right, to impact and lead these teams. And I mean, customer bases in the thousands and up to the millions. I'm walking through these grocery stores at any point in time. It was super unique. Right
yeah, that's really cool. So obviously you guys learned grit early on to run a team like that, to run 5 or 6 stores, 75 people at 22, 23 years old. Not everybody has the grit to do that, honestly. A lot of people would run from that. So from there, where did you go, Ken?
So I did that for 5 years, and I wasn't as successful as Brandon. He was one of the quickest promoted district managers to a director position. So by the time I got him over to the good side, which is the real estate industry, I think he was running 70 or 80 stores in Michigan. But right around that 5-year mark as a district manager at Aldi, just got a little antsy. You're kind of in the same role, and they run everything organizationally very lean. So they don't have a lot of, let's say, lateral moves or smaller promotions. They have big promotions, right? So when there's bigger promotions and they run the organization lean, they're also pretty infrequent. So was 5 years in, wasn't sure if I wanted to be a grocery guy forever. One of my really good college friends, he got his license right after college. His mom was a realtor. They were just starting a very small team at Keller Williams. I think they had 3 or 4 agents, 1 admin. And it was right when, this is 2014, Brian. So it's right when teams kind of really took off. Jeff Glover's team, Tim Heil was a $55 million team down in Texas. He was just getting warmed up as a 26-year-old. And, my buddy liked the thought of a team, and he was kind of recruiting me over the last 4 or 5 years, knew I was getting antsy. And I really liked the allure of an industry that was 100% commission. And then locally, just between high school and my college network locally here in Metro Detroit, had a really big network. So I'm like, all right, I want commission. I like sales. I like people. I like kind of hunting what I kill, yada, yada, yada. So to me, it was either insurance or real estate, because I really wanted something with complete autonomy, something that was entrepreneurial, something that was, like I said, commission based, and really gave me the feeling like Aldi did of building my own business. So it kind of led me to real estate or insurance. So I applied to open up a State Farm insurance branch. That was actually my first option. Made it through 2 or 3 of the 5 interviews, didn't make it past the 3rd or 4th one, which was the biggest blessing, in disguise, which I didn't know at the time. So my only option was real estate. So then I called up my buddy Danny from college, and I said, hey, it sounds like I'm getting my license. So I joined his team in July of 2014.
Cool. Okay. And Brandon, how'd you come in after the team got started?
So I mean, Ken, we started back in 2018, right? So Ken started the team back in 2018, Best Life, and I only joined what would be probably 2 years ago last month. So like Ken said, I continued that journey at Aldi, got promoted to be director of operations. So I oversaw the district manager team. So got another peek behind the curtain, just operationally on the bigger scale. And so Ken and I had always kind of kept in touch. And, as the team grew, right, from 10 agents to 15 to 20 to 25 to multiple locations, Ken and I had a discussion of just, leadership and leading that team. And so 2 years ago, Ken brought me on board to, be forward facing with the agents and sales coach them as well, but also then the back end operations of having scaled and opened up new grocery stores, new markets, new businesses, scaling our team. So, in the last couple of years, taking us from the transactions we were doing and growing that at 15 to 20% year over year for the last couple of years. Having had that business background, Ken and I kind of laid that out in what would have been summer of 2022, kind of where we wanted to be 2, 3, 5 years from now, and slowly working towards that plan.
Okay. So are you telling me this, Brandon? You don't have to come from real estate to run a real estate ops team?
I am telling you that, right? Like
wow. I just want to make sure everyone's clear on this, because so often we think we need to promote people who have their license, who are from the industry. And you know what, guys? If you grow that way, you're going to be growing with people who think smaller than you. Surround yourself with people who know how to grow businesses and can come in and take your business to the next level, like Ken has done here. And it doesn't matter what it
took me 2 years to figure out. And then I was frustrated. I had a personal real estate coach, and I said, Brian, his name was Brian too. I said, Brian Gubernick, I'm sure you know him. I said, Uncle Brian, I said, what am I missing here? And he's like, you're looking in the wrong spot. He's like, you got to think differently. He's like, is it easier to sell real estate or is it easier to run and scale businesses? I'm like, I think it's a lot easier to sell real estate. Not that it's easy, but I think it's easier. He's like, well, look outside the industry. You don't need a realtor. That's a great realtor. You need a great operational guy, financial guy, business guy. So immediately, thought about it. And then the 2-year courtship of Brandon began.
Nice. I love it. So you mentioned some people in your intro there, Ken. You mentioned Tim Heil and you mentioned Jeff Glover.
Yep.
And you said Tim Heil was doing like 55 million at the time?
Yeah, I remember it vividly. So I just started at KW July of 2014. I think it was like the August issue. I think that their KW magazine's like out front. Heil was on the cover and they said like the $52 million man. And he was sitting there on the cover. He was kind of rolling up his sleeves. I'm like, oh my God, I was 27 at the time. He was 26. I'm like, man, this guy's got a $52 million team. Look at him go. And I had already joined the team, but I kind of read that article about him and talked about how his dad was a builder and I think in the business and how he hits the phones with his agents. And that was like kind of the first young guy that was really on the fast track at KW that I'm like, shit, we can do this too, you know?
Yeah.
Yep.
So when I came in to this industry was just slightly after that. And I remember going to all these masterminds with all these top teams. And I remember their goal was to all get to 100 million, right? 100 million. That was the goal. Now, I remember they would all stand up and introduce themselves at these masterminds and they would say, in this case, I'm Tim Heil, right? I'm doing 55 million in production, right? And I have X number of agents. And I remember, and not necessarily Tim wasn't in these rooms that I'm talking about, but I remember asking them, that's what you did last year. What have you done this year? And they could never answer because they didn't know their numbers in their business, right? And now I look at it and I remember everyone's goal. They were always like, the goal was to get to 100 million in volume. What was your volume last year?
Ended up being just about 163
I'd say
million?
163 and change. Yep.
Right. So you far surpassed that. And where are you at so far year to date this year? And you can pull up your dashboard if you need, BV.
Yeah, I wish I had my laptop open right in front of me. I look at that thing 10 times a day, and normally I'd tell you right spot on. I believe, around 180 million right now.
Yeah, I was going to say
pacing to do about 210 million.
Okay, yeah, so then you're double. You'll do 210 million this year, which is double what anybody was doing back then. And I would say it's because people run their businesses different than they did back then, right? Back then, Gary Keller wrote the MREA book, and it was, here's how you build a team, and you would surround yourself with this ops person, and you would surround yourself with this showing assistant, and then you would add some agents, and ultimately it was, how do you make $1 million, right? But now I see teams like you guys making millions of dollars in GCI, right? And so the industry's just evolved so much. So I just wanted to point that out because what 10 years ago was big is now not that big, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So you came in, Brandon, and it sounds like shortly after that, right after you came in, you guys discovered Sisu. How did you discover Sisu?
Yeah, I think it's probably some conversations. I mean, we used to use classic Excel spreadsheets, right? Every deal goes in there, manual entry. And it started first and foremost, we were looking for a transaction management software. It's kind of where we started.
And why? Why were you looking for transaction management? Like, what was your process back then?
So the way we operate the team is we have full service transaction coordination on the back end for all of our agents, right? Yep. So agents put in a sub form and we have in-house transaction coordinators that see it from start to finish at that point, being the point person with the agents.
And when he says sub form, it's like a Google form that they submit and it kind of enters the information on the transaction and then it kind of
okay, so let's dive into that. Thanks for the clarity, Ken. So people would submit a Google form. That Google form would go to whom?
Transaction coordinators.
So a transaction coordinator would get it.
Yeah.
What would they do with it?
Take it, enter it into manual spreadsheets that then
so they would enter it from a Google sheet into a spreadsheet.
Yep, all the information for that to build out like a task list that they would then execute on the back end for TC tasks. And then they put it in a different form that would then be our financials. So it's kind of two forms, the transaction management side and the financial side, both separate spreadsheets.
Was your task list actually in a spreadsheet?
It was just had classic little check boxes and just go one down the list all the way down. So,
Wow. Okay. And this was 2 years ago, right?
That was 2 years ago. Yeah. That was the $137 million version of Best Life and Company.
Yeah, I love it. And so then you'd have to take it out of that and put it into a spreadsheet.
Yep.
And then, like, if you wanted to make a business decision, like, let's say you wanted to say, like, what kind of ROI are we getting on these lead sources, or which agents are converting the highest, or like, where's our breakdown in just, let's say, appointment met to signed? Like, how would you get that information?
Yeah, I mean, that was the really, and Ken, you might be able to touch on that.
I can tell you, here's what we do. So we use Slack for our intra-company communication, Brian.
Yeah.
So I'd post a message in Slack and I'd say, hey, everyone do me a favor and take 10 minutes and go through all your set and mets in the last 30 days and enter your response here. And then they would go through their calendar. They would do it. They would post in Slack. I would manually tally everything, and then I'd come up with some figures that I was interested in. That's how we do it.
Wow. Okay. How long did that take, Ken?
Every time I had an idea, I mean, you're talking about 20 agents trying to track down information in Slack, busy, productive agents. I mean, sometimes days to compile the info just so I could use it on a morning call for 5 minutes. So,
yeah. Okay, cool. At least you were thinking about it, right? So Brandon, when you guys were taking it out of the Google intake forms and putting it into two different spreadsheets, like, how long did it take to enter that data into those different spreadsheets?
It varied, right? And then, I mean, half hour to an hour at any point in time to get stuff rolling per deal, right?
Okay, so 30 to 60 minutes per deal.
Yeah.
And how many deals were you guys doing at the time? 130?
At that point in time, right, Ken, probably 400.
No, I was saying, because I was saying 130, 140 million. So yeah, probably something like
so
that.
400.
Something like that.
Okay, 400. Yep. Okay, so then you guys discovered Sisu.
Yep.
And what changed? Like, why? You said you wanted transaction management, but
so I mean, that's kind of where it started, right? And it was two-pronged. One was transaction management, and the other one was it'd be a Saturday morning, and Ken and I would be texting, and we'd be where are we pacing this month? How many deals do we have in? What do we have in escrow right now outstanding? Because we'd always see snapshots of the last couple of days, but we wouldn't see releases. We wouldn't see what's already closed, a cash deal that closed in 7 days. We wouldn't know what was like an outstanding, what we call a pending deal, right? So, the combination of both of those, that's then why we turned to Sisu, right? We found that it had both of those kind of simultaneous to where we would have operational insight to the finances of how many deals are in escrow, what's pending, what are the closing dates upcoming, and the transaction coordinators will then be able to build out their task list. So the big thing that started is we took our spreadsheets in conjunction with Laura at Sisu, who gave us some insight into how other top teams at Sisu were structured. And we built out this automated task list based on days since getting into escrow, right? So every day a TC goes in there and they have their hit list of 8, 10, 15, 25 items due today based on where these, currently we have 98 deals in escrow, right? 98 outstanding pendings. And
today you have 98 in escrow.
Today we currently have 98.
Congratulations.
Yeah, no, it was a great month for us last month. Second highest month we've ever had as a team in October. So in a really strong position. But with that, all of them are at a different point in time, right? And so our TC can pop in today and say exactly what she needs to work on automatically right in front of her, hits that list. And then Ken and myself, we pop in there. I can speak for myself, pop in there every single morning, right? And we can look at Sisu and say, hey, we're currently at 98 pendings and when $31 million outstanding, it helps us to know what's coming down the pipeline, what's going to close by the end of the year, what sort of sales contests or budget we can work with as we look ahead at future months. So it just gives us a ton more insight. I mean, that's kind of the other goal we had when we jumped on board.
Cool. So you mentioned automated task list. What does that mean? What's automated?
Yeah. So just, we look at something and say, here in Michigan, you might have a 7-day inspection period typically, right? So, an agent would go in there, they would say how long their inspection period is. So you're in escrow today, right? And they'll say the inspection period 7 days from now. On day 6, our transaction coordinator has a message in their inbox to reach out to that agent and say, hey, is this cleared and moving forward? So it was
Cool.
able to set up daily reminders ahead of potential hiccups in the transaction to make sure the agent was on top of it. One of the things we're prideful of is just agent productivity, right? And leveraging those TCs. They don't know if it's day 5, 6, 7, 8 sometimes. And so our TCs, the goal is to stay on top of that. And that task list is built out to keep them one day, one step ahead every single time.
Yeah. Now, a lot of our teams grow because they're able to recruit and onboard more agents or using our recruiting and onboarding platform. But with you guys, I think your growth has actually come from a different means. Is that right? Your growth you haven't added that many agents over the last 2 years, but you've gone from 400 to 750 transactions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
right.
right about there. Yeah.
So you guys are focused on agent productivity. I want to dive into that. Like, what does that mean? I heard you just mention, Brandon, a sales contest.
Yeah. And Ken, I'll let you touch on that, right? I know it's kind of been a big piece of how we grew the team and kind of where we're at now.
Yeah. So Ken, you've grown from 400 to 750 transactions. That's massive. And I think you said you've only added like 5 or 6 agents.
Yep. In the last year. Yep.
Yeah. So how did you do that?
If you've been enjoying Grit, please help us continue to grow the channel by leaving a 5-star review and sharing it with a friend. Now back to Grit.
I get asked this a lot, and I'm always kind of a little bit of a loss, right? Because I feel like we don't do anything. We don't have like a magic pill. But if I think about it, kind of in its simplest form, I think consistency and probably just like consistency and coaching would be the two. So one of the things that are really important to us is consistency. So since day one, when I hired my first agent, our Laura, who's our current executive admin director of operations, she was my first hire. We did a morning call. And when I hired her, it was just her and I. If we were together, it was a morning chat. If we weren't, it was a morning call, 8:30 to 9 every morning. And we've had a morning call every single day from 8:30 to 9 as a company since really my first hire, since almost month 1. So I think the consistency, and we have a different topic every day, gets people out of bed, gets the juices flowing, gets everybody kind of their mind sharp and just gets them up and moving. So I think consistency of the morning training calls has been really big for us. And we've had a monthly meeting, a monthly sales meeting since day one. And then the other piece of it is the consistency in coaching. Everybody in the company, whether they're on the sales side or not, they get coached one-on-one twice a month. And now with Sisu, we're using Sisu for most of the data and insight for our coaching forums. So the old coaching forums used to be pretty manual, like Brandon suggested, and now they're a lot more automated. And with having all that data and insight at our fingertips, it's making our coaching go a lot better and a lot more efficient. So I think consistency with the morning calls, the coaching, the sales meetings, I think that's a really big piece of our consistent and growing productivity. Brandon, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think the other piece, and one of the things we're probably prideful about, Brian, is we bring on new agents and we bring on agents who are also top producers as well, right? So it's kind of a unique blend that we've brought onto the team. I think last time we looked at it, I think it was like 15 or 18% of our team was going to make north of $180,000 after team splits, after every split. Right. Yeah. So we're prideful of the production aspect, but the big piece of that then comes, I say there's 2 reasons people typically are going to join our team, and one's to come here and learn or to leverage. Right. And when I say leverage, it's leverage our transaction coordination and our behind the scenes operations. We host client appreciations events for the team. We have showing agents. We have a number of things we do to then help leverage. And the big thing that we found super helpful is over the last 2 years is as you grow and scale and you get 700 deals, there's a lot of moving pieces, right? And the more you can put a process in place to where a deal doesn't become a headache at every hiccup, it just becomes something you work through because you're one step ahead has been super helpful. Because we had a guy who joined, he was an independent agent before, and he joined the team, and he said 28 deals here seems much easier than 8 on my own. Right. It's the idea of just the leverage and the smoothness behind the scenes to where you can go prospect, you can go show another house and your deal's making it to the closing table or things are moving along.
Yeah. So it's really, really cool. So Ken, you talked a lot about consistency. And one thing I think when you talked about coaching, I think there's also consistency at that next level. Like, what do you do to consistently get your people to do the activities that it takes to sell the 28 transactions a year?
Yep. Well, I think it starts, I mean, luckily, the team that we started growing Best Life with in 2018, 2019, there's a pretty big chunk of those hires that are still with us. So I think it starts with, we got lucky and had a really good nucleus, and we kind of set the culture of prospecting, right? I come from a Keller Williams background. We're now at EXP, but, kind of I learned through making contacts, and 9 to 11, you make your calls, and then you have lead follow up, and you manage your database, right? So that's kind of foundationally how I learned in the culture that BV and I try to, have. And I think we have a really good group. We have two really great offices. We try to make, lead generation optional, but, strongly encouraged. So, a lot of times there is office participation, and I feel like we have just a good, productive, mature group that takes care of their business. I don't know, and last thing I'll say, obviously, right, we're a Zillow Flex team, so that's been big for us. And growing a Zillow team, I mean, it's almost a whole other department of your team just because it's another animal. But I think we've just done a really good job of being consistent, and I think we coach very, very hard, even though it doesn't feel that way to the agents. But I think we coach very, very hard, and I think when you do that, it just ingrains habits. Podcast is called Grit, habits, grit, and consistency in those agents. And then we've had a ton of success, and we have a top 10 leaderboard. We do a lot of sales contests, and this group's pretty competitive. So everyone wants to be on the top 10, and everyone's trying to keep up with each other. So
I'm guessing that sales contests and those leaderboards are all in Sisu as well.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, because I think about it, I remember when I first started building Sisu and I met with one of the largest brokerages back on the East Coast. They happened to be Better Homes and Gardens brokerage. And they were talking about leaderboards, and they were talking about sales contests, and they were doing them on a whiteboard. So I just want to make sure that people know it's not that difficult to do. Like, again, if you streamline and automate and have all of your back office stuff in the same place as your front office. So Ken's leveraging Sisu to run the sales organization. Brandon's leveraging Sisu to manage the back office organization. In doing so, you have automated leaderboards, dashboards, sales contests, everything, which is so much fun. That's actually how we started the company, around that, because it does drive agent production. So in the last 2 years, you guys have taken agent production from an average agent doing how many deals a year to where it is now?
Brandon,
what was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, I would say probably 23, 24 homes per agent, in 2022, and we're probably going to do 20 or 21 homes per agent this year.
Okay.
Yeah. So staying fairly consistent with that as we grow, right? I would say probably back then we had 22, 23 agents, and now we're in the, high 30s, low 40s.
Yeah, but from everything I've seen too, Brian, I was just going to say, I mean, as you continue to grow, the productivity challenge of productivity per agent, I mean, that's just the fight that team leaders and organizations face with growing teams. So the fact, I think, it's kind of like when transactions go down, if you're not up, but you maintain, you're still gaining market share. We really feel like keeping that productivity at a couple deals a month has been really, really key for us, and really kind of put us ahead of a lot of other, teams and whatnot in the area.
Yeah, for sure. So Ken, maybe you can give us some insights as to what your one-on-ones look like. I'm teaching team leaders all the time how to run one-on-ones out of Sisu. I've never taught you how to run one out of Sisu, but I want to know how your one-on-ones look so that you can just share with these teams. How do you keep your agents in that high production mode of at least 2 transactions a month?
Yeah, so a lot of things we do. I mean, we'll ask them, everybody has a metric, and we're pretty flexible with what the metrics are. We don't think that you should have a uniform metric. We think that, you kind of customize it and tailor it to whatever, you think is best for that agent. So we start out, what were your metrics last week? Did you hit them? If you did, great, let's talk about it. If you didn't, why not? What was the challenge? So just kind of basic stuff like that. Typically there's action items, that they have. Coaching's every 2 weeks, right? So typically they got some action items that they need to execute, whether it's securing a deal or, getting a deal to the closing table, that are a little more specific than the metrics. So we go through that. Immediately it jumps into a follow-up boss audit. So we use follow-up boss really in conjunction with Sisu. So jump into follow-up boss. We'll do a spot check on a couple leads. We have certain sales processes and lead follow-up processes. So it allows us to kind of look at some game film of how they text and communicate, how the frequency of it, what type of value they're giving their agents. So we kind of spot check 1 or 2 leads and really do a deep dive on a couple of those, as opposed to a lot of surface level coaching questions. We really try to go deeper, not wider, on a couple examples to really, help them, get some traction. And then from there, obviously we're right back at Sisu and we're talking about deals that they have pendings for the month, listings, buy side, what they're pacing for the month. And then we always look at year to date. We always kind of take a step back and say, what's your year to date goal in units and volume? What are you pacing? And do we have to make any adjustments in metrics or activity to help get you back on track?
Okay.
That's
awesome.
the short version, but 45-minute coaching.
How long does each of those sessions take?
Yeah, generally about 45 minutes.
Okay. And you said every 2 weeks?
Yep. Every 2 weeks. Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing that. So right now, here we are, November 6th. What are you doing to get ready for next year? What have you done? What do you have in the plans? Are you guys like bringing the team together to set goals? What's happening there?
Yeah, we got a lot of good stuff, BV.
Yeah, I mean, first thing we do, so every November meeting, we walk through a business plan for 2024 or 2025. It'll be this time, right? And we'll walk through a business plan that we utilize kind of, first starts personal, where do you want to be and get to? And then we kind of factor that back into then real estate and breaking it all the way down to the conversation, right? And so we then get those goals. We look at Sisu, look at the stats. We provide everybody kind of stats of, from conversations to appointment, like how many people do you need to talk to how many appointments do you need to set to how many do you need to meet with. We go all the way down. We get tailored percentages so people know, okay, if I want to close 10 million in 2025, how many conversations do I need to have every single day, right? We work all the way back. So that's our business plan we do. And then actually, I think it's pretty neat. Started this, 2 years ago, Ken? We have the whole team put together like a 45 to 60 second video, and we piece them all together in a half hour, 40 minutes, and we share it at the team meeting, but they walk through the highlights of their business plan for the next year. What are they shooting for? Why are they shooting for it? Right? Like, what's their big why? Usually it's something personal, family, relationship, personal growth, whatever it may be, but it kind of gets the whole team bought into each other, their goals, what are they striving for, some peer-to-peer accountability. And that's been really cool to see year over year.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm going to steal that from you guys and share it across the industry, just so you know.
Yeah, no, it's been, we shared it in person the first year. Those ended up taking 5 to 6 minutes a person because everyone gets talking. So we put together these videos, and last year was awesome. And you get to see your agents' personalities come out a little bit too, which was pretty unique. So that's a big thing. And then, the back end stuff for me and Ken, is just taking a look at what does 2025 look like for us operationally with growth, right? And kind of creating our budget and everything that we look at for next year, kind of simultaneously to, agents and their expectations.
On the front end, BV, I thought you were going to say what we have coming up in a couple of weeks, Brian. So our slogan is Beyond Real Estate. And, to me, that just means clients become family. And we always want to grow our business foundationally through, raving fan experiences, close clients becoming family, and then getting referrals and growing our close client referral base from our raving fans, right? So our team slogan is Beyond Real Estate. So in 2 weeks, we have a Beyond Real Estate week, where the team's going to come into the office hopefully every day, but we're going to do a couple fun sales contests. And really the week before Thanksgiving, we're just going to hit our SOI and our close clients really, really hard, whether it's giving them CMAs, giving them massive value, checking in on them so that, heading into the holidays, we're top of mind and we are the real estate team of choice. And we think that'll give us, it's a good week to give us a really strong foundation heading into Q1 of next year. So the team's excited about that. We just announced it and we'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah. And Ken, that leads into, we do a pie day, right? So we get Thanksgiving pies for the team. So every agent on the team, new or veteran, gets 10 pies, right? And so they can order their quantities. And so throughout the weekend leading into Thanksgiving and the week of Thanksgiving, so we're going to do a whole team-wide pie delivery day. We drive them out to close clients. Right. Mm-hmm. We go deliver those to close clients or sphere or referral sources. And so that's always a fun time for us too. So this year, I think we have 440 or 450 that we have ordered. Right. So that'll be 450 direct one-on-one in-person touch points, that our agents will have with their database, which is pretty awesome.
It's great. I mean, so many people take off from Thanksgiving to December, and it's really what sets you up for the next year. And so that's why I wanted you guys to share some of this stuff,
Yeah.
because what
Yep.
you do today is what January is going to look like, right?
You got it.
Yeah. So, okay, you guys, this is great. It's amazing. You guys run an amazing business, and I'm just grateful that Sisu is a part of it and can really help you guys run more efficiently and know your numbers better and just hold your agents accountable better and all those things. So, I'd love to hear. I have one question, and then I'd love to hear a little bit of advice. So, are you guys using the client portal as well?
So we're not right now. We're in the process of getting that kind of figured out and leveraged. When we rolled out, we wanted to deep dive into the transaction side. So client portal kind of went on the back end, but the last 60 to 90 days, we've realized more and more the need for it because it's just keeping the clients up to speed on their side. So not there yet, but it'll become.
I think what you guys will find is it actually empowers communication with the client and streamlines that whole process, which is equally as important as everything you're doing internally. And so you're going to love it. So, what advice do you guys have? I want it from each of you. Ken, I'm going to take it from you for like a team leader or a sales leader, and Brandon, then we're going to move over to you. And I just want to know what advice you have for an ops leader who wants to grow and scale every year, like you guys are.
BV and I mean, we've been able to grow a really good organization. This is my second team that I've grown at a large scale, and it's still a challenge every single day. And I think that's why I love it, because we're sickos, but don't do it for reasons other than the fact that you want to grow a team and you kind of have that leadership heart, right? If you love sales, you have a leadership heart. I mean, you kind of start with that, and the byproduct is what most people think is when you grow a big team, you make all this money. A lot of times that's not even the case. But if you grow it the right way, and for me, what I, kind of figured out was the right way to me meant not sacrificing agent productivity. So even though we're at 42 agents today, there's no doubt we could be at, 82 agents. And 1A in terms of our North Star was always going to be agent productivity, and we were never going to sacrifice that for agent count. So I think you kind of pick and choose a couple things that you're married to. Other than that, if you want to grow and scale, don't sweat the small stuff and be very flexible with some of these other things, right? This is my second round, and I had a lot more accountability of being in the office and being in at certain times and doing this and doing that. But pick a couple things, marry those, hold your team accountable, do them really well, be flexible and a lot of other things, and you're going to be able to retain and also grow. That's what I'd say.
It's great advice. What about you, Brandon?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest things would be, especially in operations, right? Operations isn't always sexy. You're dealing with the problems, right? You get all the problems all the time, right? You hear the scenarios that need to be solved. And I would say, from my perspective, be open to feedback. Be open to feedback from the agents. Be open to feedback from your admin, what's working, what's not. We listened to a training, and they said the team you joined today won't be the team that exists tomorrow, right? We're going to change every day. And I think we've done a good job of hearing agent feedback and doing our best to put systems in place, whether that's automations and follow-up boss, whether that's back-end transaction coordination, whether that's, developing our showing agent program to next levels, or, bringing new training programs on. Like, it's fluid and it's going to change. And the process you have today doesn't mean it needs to be the process tomorrow, right? But be open to feedback from your agents, from your ops team, and just know that being fluid and dynamic's okay. Right.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we should always be advancing and growing, right? And that's why that's why it's so important. If we have systems, you can then easily make an addition to that system, and that'll be repeatable on every transaction, right? Yeah, that's great advice. Ken, you were going to say?
I was just going to say, Brandon said that, and it's like, you're always in the messy middle. People ask us, oh my God, you guys must be running so efficiently and running like a top. And I'm like, oh my God, you have no idea. Growth is messy all the time, right? It's taking chances. It's adapting Sisu. And when you roll that out, of course it's messy. It's a massive product that's going to change our business. I mean, it is, I'm kidding, but it's a shit show in the middle all the time. And messy is good because that means you're growing, right? So don't be afraid of the messy. You're always in the messy middle, and that's usually where the growth happens.
Yeah, great advice. Okay, guys. Well, again, it was fun meeting you in person last week at EXPCon, and thank you for joining us on the show today. And for all you listeners, like, just keep listening, and I'll keep bringing on powerhouses like this so that every week you can join in and see what the best of the best are doing to grow their business. So once again, guys, thanks for joining. And again, what is the best way to reach you guys, Ken and Brandon, if anybody wants to reach out to you?
I'd say online, social media, at Ken Hirschmann, realtor, Hirschmann, and then at Best Life and Co. Either one, hit us up and let's connect.
Yep.
Great. So this is Brandon and Ken out of Best Life and Co. out of Michigan. So feel free to reach out to them, guys, and I'm sure they're happy to help you guys expand your business any way they can. Again, guys, thanks for joining us on the show. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you for joining us on our podcast. If you have an interest in a free 7-day trial of Sisu, go to sisu.co, sisu.co. Make sure that you use the coupon code GRIT, that's GRIT, to waive all your setup fees and receive a 10% discount on your subscription. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast and want to subscribe, search GRIT, the Real Estate Growth Mindset, on iTunes, Spotify, or Podbean. And with that, we'll catch you next time. Take care.